Welcome to episode 2 of NES Revisited. We're going to be checking out the Programmable Series games. There's 3 of them, so let's go check them out. Alright, let's start off with some Excitebike. Get intro music and a quick demo. Choosing Selection A lets you race alone to try to beat the best times, without worrying about crashing into the other bikers. You can choose any of the 5 tracks, and if you get a podium finish, which is top 3, it will automatically advance you to the next race. If you place in the top 3 on track 5, you get to repeat track 5 as many times as you want. According to the manual, tracks 1 through 5 are called challenge races. When you beat track 5, you race 5 again, and that race is considered the main race. Confusing, I know. The best way to know if you're in the main race is if you look on the bottom right, you're going to see the letter T, and that'll show you which track you're on, and then every time you beat the track, it just goes up 1 number. Selection B is the same thing, but now you have to race with other bikers. You're going to start the race with 3 other racers at the starting line, but you'll surely realize that there's tons of other racers ahead and behind you. So pay no mind to those racers, you're really racing for yourself. This really ramps up the difficulty since crashing takes up a ton of time. If you're in front of a biker, they'll crash, but if you're behind one, you'll crash instead. So it might be wiser to avoid them and run over slow areas to be safe. If you do crash, and you will, just be sure to press A and B as fast as you can to get back to your bike faster. This game is all about rhythm. Find the best path by avoiding mud, doing a wheelie over the small bumps, and landing as flat as possible. You'll know if you've landed perfectly, because if you don't, you either bounce a few times or you slow down. Worst case scenario, you'll actually crash. Wheelies are fun, but don't wheelie too hard, or you're gonna go down. You hold B instead of A to use turbo, but make sure you don't overheat. The temp gauge will let you know, and that awful sound will warn you. If you don't cool off, you're gonna overheat. You're gonna have to wait a few seconds before you can get back to the race again. Just make sure you let off the turbo or hit that double arrow, which is cooling zones that instantly cool off your motor, and just finish in the top 3 to move on. Choosing design will allow you to create your own track. You can't actually save the track, but it will remain in your game until you turn the power off. To start, you select design to bring up the track editor. The letters A through S represent different pieces of the track. You can hit B on each letter to see what it represents. Hitting A will advance the track. Selecting CL will erase the object. When you're done, you select end, and it'll ask how many laps. You could choose between 1 and 9 if you want. Now back at the main menu, you can race that track with either mode A or B. Like I mentioned before, you can't save your game. If you check out the menu, it will say,
Save and load menu selections are not operable in this game. They have been programmed in for potential product developments.
What they're actually referring to is a cassette attachment called the Famicom Data Recorder. In 1984, the Japanese version of the Nintendo called the Famicom used that cassette recorder to load and save data. 1986, Japanese would replace that recorder with the Famicom Disk System. Unfortunately, the US didn't get either of them. The Game Boy Advance version, released in 2004, was part of the classic NES series, which finally allowed you to save your tracks. Well, it goes without saying that Excitebike was a must-have at launch. It's still a great game today. The only downfall is that you can't save your tracks on the original NES hardware, and there isn't a 2-player mode. It's easy to find an original cart, and it's available on pretty much every iteration of Nintendo's Virtual Console. I can't imagine anybody who's played any Nintendo game has never played this particular one, but if you haven't, try to find a way to play it. It's a lot of fun. Next up, we have Mach Rider. Man, I love that music. Up till now, we haven't experienced anything great musically. This game's gonna change that. You get a few options on this one. Fighting course is like the story mode of the game. You get some detail in the world and you can choose your path to the next sector. First off, you get music while you play. And even though there's only one song, it's a really good one, and it perfectly matches that dark wasteland theme of the game. The premise of this game is to make it to the end of the stage without crashing too many times. It tells you how much farther you need to go along with your energy and ammo. There isn't a brake button, just gotta let go of the gas to slow down. There's also a gearbox, so you need to hit up to change gears once you hear the motor hit its highest pitch. The first sector is really easy and short. The next sector, difficulty ramps way up. You now die if you crash 3 times, and if a car hits you from behind, you explode immediately. Good luck with this mode. Now, endurance mode is more my speed. You have to reach the goal within a certain time limit to qualify for the next track. You can still shoot cars, there's tons of obstacles like water, oil, and barrels. But you can explode yourself as many times as you want. It's still challenging, but not nearly as brutal as fighting course. Solo course is essentially endurance course, but without all the drivers on the road. Although this mode is easier, I find that riding by yourself is strange. All you hear is the music and your bike maxed out. Honestly, I prefer some enemies on the road. It helps to make the game less monotonous. The design menu works in the same way as Excitebike. Programming for Mach Rider is a little more straightforward. You'll just start from one side and match pieces together until you reach the other side. All you can do is create the path layout. All the obstacles are randomly generated for your tracks, so you just have to lay out the pathway. Use the D-pad to move the top corner cursor around the track. This highlights the available tracks on the bottom screen. Press A to replace the pieces. When you're ready, hitting select will either bring you back to the design menu, or it's going to move the cursor to a problem area. Once you're done, choose your mode and try out your track. As usual, you can't save your course in this version. That would have really added some extra replay value to this game. I feel like this game really set the bar high for music and graphics for the NES. This wasn't your typical one-screen arcade game. It had variety, fast gameplay, and great music for the time. It's hard not to like this game for what it is. It was visually impressive for 1985. Aside from the solo mode, this game is brutally difficult. In 1985, you didn't have the internet to find out things like if you've reached stage 6, 11, or 16 before you get a game over. Holding B and left while pressing start on the title screen will allow you to continue at that stage. Also, there were power-ups you could get by completing certain objectives, like shoot a certain amount of barrels in a stage. Nintendo Power magazines and friends were the usual ways to get information. I remember playing this game in the early 90s and loving this game. I didn't play long because I didn't get past the first few levels. I'd do some solos and eventually get bored of it. I never owned the game, so I couldn't really get good at it either. The fact that the game is hard is not really the issue though. It's the turns. If you haven't noticed, they can get sharp and almost always have lines of boulders, oil, and exploding oil barrels. These enemies are hard enough on their own, but the turns, man, that's where I ended up getting really frustrated. Difficulty aside, this game was amazing for the time. Definitely has that arcade feel that people were looking for in a home console. Is this game worth playing today? Well, what you see is what you get. If you're into challenging race games, this one is solid but frustrating. Learn the power-ups and use the continue code, and you can get pretty far with some practice. This is one of those games that falls in that category of NES hard. Time to check out the last Programmable Series game, Wrecking Crew. No title music, but there is a demo. Oddly out of place in this video. Wrecking Crew is a one-screen style arcade puzzle game. You play as Mario and your objective is pretty simple. You have to knock down all the walls on the screen. There are 4 different types. You got brick walls that take more than one hit, and you also need to knock down the ladder walls. This is where the puzzle aspect comes into play. It's Mario, but he can't jump. A and B just swings the hammer. Knock down the ladder walls too soon, you can't access the upper levels. There are other props on the screen like doors, pillars, and ladders that are there to help you. Hit the door and the monsters will go in and out of them. Bombs can help break walls, but can also knock you down, so be careful how you use them. Sometimes you'll see the foreman, his name is Spike, and he's in the background. There are only 3 enemies, Gotcha Wrench Jr., and Eggplant Man. Yeah, don't ask. Also, a fireball will usually come out after a certain time to add more obstacles in your way. This is similar to Mario Brothers. 2-player mode alternates between Mario and Luigi. Co-op mode would have been really nice in this one. Even though it didn't have title music, I know it's a pet peeve of mine, I was glad it had game music. It's a nice loop that isn't too harsh on your ears. It's one of those games that are simple, yet fun to play. Anytime you want to back out of the level, you just hit the select and go to the main menu. You can select any level you want up to 100. Yeah, it seems a little strange that you can do that, but to be honest, I haven't beat 100 yet, so I'm not sure what happens after that. I guess it probably just goes back to 1. It does diminish the challenge aspect a bit if you know it doesn't matter if you die. You get lives, but it doesn't really matter unless you care about scores. High scores are very popular in the 80s, but that's just to simulate the arcade experience. That's really the only drawback I can think of, but it doesn't take away from how fun the game is. I bet there were tons of people that passed on this game at launch just because it looked too simple. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, this game also has a design mode, without a save function of course, so it's not as cool as it could be. This game is definitely a fun game if you're into arcade style games like Donkey Kong. It's got the trial and error puzzle mechanic that keeps you trying again and again. I had a lot of fun playing this game and I still play it every once in a while. You can find the original NES version for about $20. It's also available for the Wii U and Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console for much less. Definitely worth a couple of bucks. Alright, well that concludes the Programmable Series. Continuing with the launch titles, in the next episode we're going to be checking out the Action Series. So thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episodes. Thanks.